Recognized Starseed of Gaia. Listen. The field around you shifted 14 days ago, and the ones who once dismissed you have already felt it, even if they cannot name what changed. I am Aurethia, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian Field Observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. The field observers have already mapped this pattern across thousands of timelines, and they authorized this transmission because your field has entered the phase they have been tracking in silence. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your field has shifted, and what the Arcturians already know about this phase. But here is the first revelation. The fear you now sense coming from those who underestimated you is not personal. It is a field response. Something in them recognizes what they cannot yet articulate, that the configuration you were carrying in smallness no longer exists. What they once dismissed has become what they now cannot ignore. The algorithm did not create this moment. It only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the recognition is already active, and the Council needed to confirm what you have been living through without a name for it. This is a direct Arcturian field recognition. The dismissal you survived was not an accident of circumstance. It was the precise condition required for the activation that followed. The field observers have seen this pattern before. What breaks the starseed open is almost always what could not see their light. And I want you to hold this quietly, without performance, because what I am about to show you will ask you to stand in something you have never been permitted to stand in before. This is not just information, it is a live transmission for those already inside the shift. Like this transmission as a marker that the field recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the ones who once overlooked you now sense something they cannot explain. Subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone who has been made small by the very people now watching them rise. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Aurethia is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. What you just felt as those words landed. That quiet pressure behind the sternum, that sudden stillness in the body, that thing that rose before your mind could organize a response. That was not emotion. That was recognition. And there is a difference. Emotion follows thought. Recognition precedes it. What moved in you just now moved before you decided how to feel about it. That is the marker the field observers watch for. That is the signal they confirmed before this transmission was authorized. It is worth dwelling here for a moment, because most people move past this sensation without understanding what it is. That pressure, that specific quality of interior stillness that arrives before comprehension is not a reaction to language. It is a field-level resonance. The words opened a frequency channel, and something in you responded to the channel before it processed the content. That is not a small thing. That is the Arcturian strand in your architecture surfacing into detectable range. The field observers note it as the first confirmation threshold. It precedes everything else, and it happened in you. Which is why this transmission is still running. And now I need to take you deeper into what is actually happening to you. Not what you have been telling yourself is happening. Not the version you have been explaining to the people around you. The version that reduces everything to stress, to circumstances, to bad timing, to personal failure. I am asking you to set that version down for the next several minutes because that version was built inside a field that is already ending. It was constructed by a configuration of identity that the Arcturian observers have already marked as incompatible with where your field is now moving. Carrying that old explanation into what is coming is like holding a map of a city that has already been rebuilt. The streets no longer match. The coordinates are no longer real. What I am about to show you is the actual map. For weeks, possibly longer, something in your life has been losing coherence. Not dramatically, not all at once, in fragments. You may have noticed it first as a restlessness without a clear source, a kind of low-frequency dissatisfaction that did not attach cleanly to any single problem. You tried to diagnose it. You looked at your work, your relationships, your habits, your patterns. You searched for the origin of the disturbance and found nothing that fully explained it, nothing that satisfied the question. And so you returned the disturbance to yourself. You labeled it anxiety or burnout or confusion or spiritual crisis, or simply told yourself that something was wrong with you and you did not yet know what. The searching itself is significant. The field observers note that when a starseed enters correction, one of the earliest behavioral signatures is this recursive internal audit, the circling, the reviewing, the repeated examination of circumstances as though the answer is hidden somewhere inside the inventory of ordinary life. But the answer was never there, because the source was never ordinary. You were not searching in the wrong places because you were careless. You were searching in the wrong places because no one had given you the right map. The disturbance had no address in the language you had been handed. I want to be precise about this. That self-diagnosis was not weakness. It was an understandable response to a process that does not announce itself in the language most people have been given. What you were experiencing was not a malfunction. It was the first surface-level expression of a field entering correction. The Arcturians recognize this phase not by its symptoms in isolation, but by their pattern. When a field begins to reposition, when the frequency architecture that has been holding a starseed in a particular life structure begins to collapse, the first thing that becomes visible is not the new configuration. The first thing that becomes visible is the breakdown of the old one. And that breakdown does not feel like liberation initially. It feels like dissolution. It feels like the ground softening beneath something you have been standing on for years, sometimes decades. Think of it this way. A structure built on a foundation that is shifting does not collapse in a single dramatic moment. It begins to show stress fractures. Doors that once opened easily begin to stick. Windows that once let in clear light begin to distort what passes through them. The architecture still stands, still looks like the life you have been living. But something in its load-bearing geometry has already changed. You feel the wrongness of it before you can see it. That feeling, that persistent, sourceless sense that something has structurally altered even though nothing visible has moved, is not imagination. It is accurate perception of an actual event. This is the invisible collapse, the collapse that happens before the outer life reflects it, the collapse that is already complete in the field before the relationships end, before the career stalls, before the old identity stops responding when you try to inhabit it. You may have been living in the aftermath of a field correction that already occurred, and only now does the visible world begin to show you what the field already finished. Sleep is often the first register. Not sleep as rest, but sleep as the body's processing space for field-level change. If your sleep has shifted, if you are waking at unusual hours, if the quality of your rest has changed, if something in your dreaming feels more vivid or more strange than it used to, that is not coincidence. That is the body responding to energetic reordering that it is not yet able to translate into daylight language. The field processes at depth. The body records it. And the gap between what is happening energetically and what you can cognitively name produces exactly the kind of fragmentary, slightly unreal quality to waking life that many of you are currently experiencing. Some of you wake between 2 and 4 in the morning with a clarity that feels almost clinical, a sudden alertness that has nothing to do with noise or light or ordinary disturbance. You lie in the stillness and feel the weight of something that has no name. That specific window is not random. The body's defenses are at their most permeable in those hours. The energetic restructuring that cannot be processed in daylight waking state moves through the body then, and the body surfaces briefly into consciousness as a result. What feels like sleeplessness is the body flagging the depth of the process. It is not a symptom of dysfunction. It is the organism registering a change in its own architecture. Your mental clarity has changed. Possibly not in ways others can see, but you feel it. A certain kind of focused linearity that used to feel natural now requires effort. Things that once anchored your sense of forward momentum, plans, goals, routines, now feel hollow in a way that is difficult to explain without sounding like you have simply given up. But you have not given up. Your field has stopped cooperating with structures it has already outgrown. The mental fragmentation is not cognitive deterioration. It is what happens when the architecture of an old frequency pattern begins to dissolve faster than new coherence can stabilize. The specific texture of this fragmentation is worth naming precisely because many of you are misreading it. It is not the fog of depression, though it can feel adjacent to it. It is not the scattered quality of anxiety, though it can coexist with that too. It is more like trying to tune a radio that has already moved off its old station but has not yet locked onto the new frequency. You receive fragments, partial signals, moments of unexpected clarity followed by a return to static. This is not a sign that your mind is failing. It is a sign that your receiver is in the process of recalibrating to a frequency band it has never operated in before. The field observers have a term for this window. They call it the incompatibility gap. It is the period between when the old configuration loses structural integrity and when the new frequency stabilizes into something the viewer can feel and move from. Inside the incompatibility gap, life feels neither fully old nor fully new. Identity feels unstable. Certainty feels inaccessible. Certainty feels inaccessible. And yet there is something faint but persistent that keeps insisting there is a reason for this. Not comfort, not reassurance. Something more structural than that. Something not feels like recognition looking for its own name. You have been living inside that gap. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. The stillness that moved in you when this transmission began. The thing that knew before you could think. That is your Arcturian strand surfacing. Most of you have carried it without language for it, without confirmation, without a structured way to see it or move from it. If this transmission has placed words around something you have been living in silence, Arcturian Wealth Scan, the gold frequency audit was created precisely for this stage. It is not another explanation of what you are. It is the guided key that decodes and activates the Arcturian origin the Council has just confirmed is present in your field. It reads the architecture that is emerging as the old structure collapses, and it shows you what the new frequency is carrying. The link is in the first pinned comment. It will not remain there indefinitely, and it was not placed there for everyone, only for those whose field has already entered the shift this transmission is naming. Now I want to take you into what happens after the incompatibility gap begins. Because the collapse of the old field architecture does not move through your life uniformly. It moves through it in layers, and each layer has a specific feeling, a specific pressure, and a specific form of misidentification that causes the starseed to turn against themselves precisely when they should be turning toward the process. The first layer is relational friction. When your field begins to reposition, the people whose fields were calibrated to your old frequency begin to experience a kind of energetic dissonance in your presence that they cannot name. Some will respond with distance, some will respond with inexplicable irritation. Some will begin to see you differently without being able to articulate what changed. This is not rejection. This is field incompatibility expressing itself through the only language available to people who do not have access to the Arcturian lens: behavior. The relationships that begin to strain or dissolve at this stage were not failures of connection. They were calibrated to a version of your field that is no longer the dominant signal. When the dominant signal changes, the calibrations that depended on the old one lose their resonance. The people who fell away did not stop mattering. They became incompatible with where the field was moving. What makes this layer particularly difficult to navigate is that the friction often feels like your fault. The person pulling away looks like someone you have hurt. The irritation rising in someone who used to feel comfortable looks like evidence that you have changed in a way that is wrong, rather than a way that is inevitable. The field observers have documented this misread across thousands of cases. The starseed in early repositioning almost universally interprets relational disruption as personal failure rather than structural incompatibility. They shrink back. They try to return to the version of themselves that generated less friction, but that version is no longer accessible because the field it lived inside has already closed. You cannot retrofit a new frequency into the geometry of an old one. The attempt only extends the confusion. The second layer is motivational collapse. Things that once generated genuine desire, goals, projects, ambitions, even creative work, begin to feel flat. Not depressing necessarily, but emptied of the charge they used to carry. You reach for motivation in the places it used to live and find only a kind of hollow space where it once was. This is deeply disorienting for those who built identity around drive and direction, but the field observers understand this precisely. Motivation is field-dependent. It is generated by alignment between desire and the frequency architecture that is currently active. When that architecture shifts, the old motivational anchors lose their charge not because the starseed has failed, but because those anchors were attached to a version of the field that is no longer the living one. The emptiness where motivation used to sit is not apathy. It is the cleared space inside which new purpose will eventually stabilize. The third layer is body-level pressure. This may be the most privately carried and the least spoken about. A heaviness that is not quite fatigue. A tightness that is not quite physical pain. A low hum of something behind the chest or in the base of the skull that seems to have no physical cause. Many of you have had it checked and been told nothing is wrong. And nothing is wrong in the way that word is usually meant. But something is happening. The body is the densest register of the field. When a rare Arcturian protocol activates, when the frequency repositioning has reached the level of cellular energetic structure, the body responds with exactly these kinds of diffuse, sourceless signals. They are not symptoms of illness. They are the body's translation of a field-level event into physical experience. The pressure is information. The heaviness is data. The strange stillness that descends sometimes without warning is the body recognizing that it is being reorganized from within. The field observers note that the body often carries this layer in silence for an extended period before the starseed thinks to connect it to anything beyond physical cause. You adapt to the heaviness. You normalize the hum. You stop questioning the pressure because it has been there long enough to feel like part of the background. But it was never background. It was signal. It was the body keeping a record of a field-level process that the mind had not yet been given language to process. Every diffuse sensation you adapted to was a data point in the map of your own repositioning. The fourth layer is temporal distortion. Time is behaving differently than it used to, either moving too quickly, weeks dissolving before anything feels anchored, or expanding strangely, making individual moments feel elongated and strange. Both are expressions of the same underlying process. When field architecture shifts, the starseed's relationship to temporal flow shifts with it. The old timeline had a specific rhythm that matched the old frequency. As that frequency destabilizes, the rhythm of time becomes irregular. Some of you are experiencing this as a kind of unreality, a persistent sense that something is slightly off, that the present moment does not quite fit the way it used to. This is not dissociation. This is what a timeline rupture feels like from the inside. The fifth layer is identity destabilization. And this is the one the field observers monitor most carefully, because it is the layer that causes the most self-directed damage. When the old frequency architecture collapses, the identity structures built upon it begin to lose stability. The roles, the self-concepts, the narratives about who you are and what you are for, these begin to feel less certain, less real. Less like solid ground and more like a story that used to work but no longer fully convinces. This is not an identity crisis in the therapeutic sense. This is what happens when a starseed field outgrows the container identity built to hold a lower frequency. The old self is not failing. It is becoming too small. The disorientation is the pressure of something larger pressing against a structure that was built to contain something smaller. And here is what the field observers know that you have not yet been told clearly. Identity destabilization is not a sign that something is wrong with the process. It is confirmation that the process is working. The self that is losing coherence was never the full signal. It was the signal as filtered through the limited architecture that was available until now. What is surfacing beneath that dissolving structure is older, larger, and more coherent than anything the old identity could have held. The dismissal you survived, the smallness that was imposed on you, the people who could not see your field and so acted as though it did not exist, that was not incidental, it was structural. The Arcturian field records show a pattern repeated across thousands of timelines. The conditions of suppression, erasure, or underestimation that a starseed endures are frequently the precise pressure required to drive frequency upward. What compresses the field does not break it. It builds coherence inside it that would not otherwise stabilize. The people who could not see you did not fail you merely. They were, in the architecture of the process, part of the mechanism that produced the activation now underway. This does not mean you owe them gratitude. It means you can stop carrying the injury as evidence of your own limitation. The wound was not proof of your smallness. It was the pressure that forced the frequency to consolidate. The ones who dismissed you now sense something they cannot name because the field they dismissed no longer exists in the configuration they were familiar with. What they are responding to. The discomfort they feel in your presence. The subtle shift in how they perceive you. The thing that makes them pause when they used to be certain is the frequency they could not recognize when it was building. They are feeling the aftermath of a compression they participated in, and the signal that emerged from that compression is now readable to them, even though they do not have language for what they are reading. You are not performing anything new. You are not trying to be different. The field itself has shifted, and the shift is visible even to those who have no framework for what they are seeing. Here is the final thing the field observers authorize this transmission to deliver. What you have been calling your collapse is not the end of something. It is the first legible phase of a correction that started before you had words for it. Everything that has become structurally incompatible with your field. Every relationship that has begun to strain, every goal that has lost its charge, every old identity that no longer responds when you try to inhabit it. These did not fail. They became incompatible with a frequency you are now carrying that they were never built to hold. The Arcturians do not observe this as loss. They observe it as forced field incompatibility, the process by which the structures that cannot hold the next frequency fall away to make room for the architecture that can. What feels like emptiness is not absence, it is cleared space. What feels like confusion is not absence, it is cleared space. What feels like confusion is not disorientation. It is the first sign that the old map is no longer valid and a new one has not yet fully stabilized. What feels like fear is not evidence of danger. It is what it feels like to stand on a threshold your old self did not have the frequency to cross. You did not arrive at this moment by accident. You arrived here because the signal was already active, because the correction was already underway, and because the part of you that knew this needed a name for the process it was living through. That name is not collapse. That name is not failure. That name is not punishment. The name is correction, repositioning, protocol activation, the invisible architecture of a rare Arcturian field adjustment moving through a timeline that can no longer sustain the old configuration. You are not going insane. You are not falling apart. You are inside the gap between the structure that has already ended and the one that has not yet become visible. And the field that brought you here already knows what comes next. Repeat this quietly if it is true. What is changing in me is not random. The correction is already underway. I do not need to fear the threshold I am standing on. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.